The emergency alarms screamed across the massive Galactic Council station, their piercing wails echoing through corridors that hadn't heard such sounds in over 1,000 years. Red warning lights bathed everything in blood-colored shadows as delegates from across the galaxy rushed toward the main assembly hall. Inside the enormous chamber, chaos ruled. Holographic displays showed star maps painted in violent crimson, marking system after system going dark. The Vorthak swarm had awakened from their long sleep, and they were hungry. Ambassador Kael'thor's 4 massive arms trembled as he read the latest reports. His species, the Zentari, had faced the swarm before in ancient times. The memories were written in their genetic code, pure terror passed down through generations. Kepler 442 is gone, he announced, his voice cracking. 7 billion souls had he simply erased. The assembly fell silent. Kepler 442 had been one of the most heavily defended systems in the Outer Rim, protected by energy shields that could withstand supernovas. If it had fallen so quickly, nowhere was safe. High Counselor Vexara floated above the central podium, her translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that showed her distress. As leader of the Council, she had guided the galaxy through wars, plagues, and political crises, but nothing like this. "Show us the tactical analysis," she commanded. The main display shifted to show recordings from the last battle. The Vorthak ships looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. Instead, they resembled massive organic creatures crossed with mechanical nightmares. Tentacles writhed alongside plasma cannons. Living armor plating shifted and adapted to incoming fire. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to learn and evolve with each encounter. "Our finest battle cruisers engaged them at the Rigel defense line," reported General Thexmar, his crystalline form flickering with frustrated energy patterns. The hegemony's Omega-class destroyers, armed with quantum disruptors and reality-bending torpedoes. The Stellar Dominion's pride, the dreadnought Infinity's Edge, equipped with technology from a dozen civilizations. He paused, struggling with the words. They lasted 18 minutes combined. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Infinity's Edge alone could have destroyed entire fleets. It carried weapons that could crack planets and shields that bent space-time. Itself. "The swarm didn't just destroy our ships," continued Thexmar. "They consumed them, absorbed their technology, their crew, their very atoms. With each victory, they grow stronger, smarter, more dangerous." Ambassador Zelnara of the Aquatic World spoke next, her voice bubbling through her breathing apparatus. "My people's deep space monitoring stations detected something else. The swarm isn't moving randomly. They're following the old hyperspace routes, the ones that lead directly to the core worlds, to Earth, to Zentari Prime, to the Council Station itself." Fear spread through the chamber like a virus. These weren't random attacks. This was a coordinated invasion with clear targets. Counselor Vexara's tentacles writhed faster now. "Military. Options? What do we have left?" The answers came quickly, each more depressing than the last. The Phoenix Battalion was already deployed to defend the Andromeda Gate. The combined fleet was scattered across 50 systems, trying to evacuate civilians. The robotic armies of the Synthetic Collective had gone silent after their last engagement. "With the swarm, perhaps we should consider negotiation," suggested Ambassador Yiltara of the Peaceful Meditation Worlds. "Every species has desires, needs. Maybe—" "The Vorthak don't negotiate," Kael'thor interrupted, his forearms slamming against his podium so hard it cracked. "They consume, they adapt, they spread. It's what they were designed to do 3,000 years ago, before the First Great War supposedly destroyed them all." In the uncomfortable silence that followed, attention turned to a small section in the far corner of the chamber. The human delegation sat quietly, almost forgotten among the chaos. Their section was modest compared to the grand displays of other species, just simple chairs and a basic communication console. Representative Park raised his hand tentatively. He was an older man by human standards, maybe 60 years with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen more than their share of conflict. "Perhaps," he began, his voice barely audible over the chamber's audio systems, "we could help." The reaction was immediate. Laughter erupted from multiple delegations. The Zentari's barking chuckles mixed with the aquatic world's bubbling amusement. And the synthetic collective's mechanical clicking sounds. Humans, wheezed Ambassador Zelnara between giggles. The species that still uses chemical rockets for local transport. The ones who fight with metal bullets and explosive devices. More laughter followed. Humans had joined the Galactic Council only 800 years ago, barely yesterday in galactic terms. Their technology was primitive by Council standards. Their military consisted of simple kinetic weapons and basic energy shields. What could they possibly offer against an enemy that had just destroyed the most advanced fleets in the galaxy? But Representative Park didn't back down. He stood slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. We fought wars before, many wars. Sometimes we won, sometimes we lost. But we learned from both. The laughter continued, but it was weaker now. Something in the human's tone gave some delegates pause. Then the next report arrived. The Tau Ceti system had gone dark. 15 billion lives lost in 6 hours. The Vorthak swarm was accelerating, growing bolder with each victory. The laughter died completely. In the growing silence, desperation crept in like cosmic radiation, invisible but deadly. The greatest military powers in galactic history had fallen. Traditional tactics had failed. Advanced technology proved useless. Maybe it was time to try something different. The docking bay of Council Station buzzed with activity as alien delegates gathered to witness the arrival of Earth's response to their desperate call for help. Massive view screens displayed the approaching human vessel, and what they saw confused everyone. The ship looked ancient by galactic standards. Its hull bore the scars of countless battles, plasma burns, meteor impacts, and patches of different metals where repairs had been made over decades. This wasn't the gleaming warship they expected. It looked more like a transport that had seen too many wars. Ambassador Kael'thor's forearms crossed in disappointment. This is their answer? A cargo hauler? The human ship settled into the docking bay with practiced ease, its engines making the distinctive whine of older fusion drives. Steam hissed from cooling vents as the boarding ramp lowered with a mechanical groan that echoed through the station. What emerged from that ship changed everything. The first figure to appear was Admiral Park, and the assembled delegates immediately noticed his missing left arm. The sleeve of his simple grey uniform was pinned neatly where his elbow should have been. His remaining hand gripped a walking stick carved from earth wood, and his silver hair was cut in a military style that spoke of decades of service. Behind him came General Kim, a woman whose face told stories of survival. A scar ran from her left temple to her jaw, crossing an eye that had gone milky white from some long-ago injury. She moved with the careful balance of someone who had learned to adapt to old wounds. One by one, they emerged from the ship. Captain Lee, whose hands showed the distinctive burn patterns of someone who had fought in the vacuum of space without proper protection. Colonel Choi, who walked with a slight limp from a leg that had been shattered and rebuilt with titanium and determination. Commander Yoon, whose right ear was missing entirely, replaced by a simple hearing device that had been standard military issue 30 years ago. The alien delegates stared in shock. These weren't the young, eager warriors they had expected. These were old humans marked by battle, worn by time, but carrying themselves with a quiet dignity that spoke of hard-won wisdom. 73 years old, whispered Dr. Rilvana of the Medical Collective, scanning Admiral Park with her biosensors. 68, 71, 69, she continued, reading the ages of the other humans. By galactic standards, these are ancient warriors. High Counselor Vexara floated down from her platform, her tentacles writhing with confusion. Representative Park, we appreciate Earth's response to our crisis, but we requested military assistance. These appear to be retired soldiers. Admiral Park's weathered face cracked into a thin smile. Retired? Ma'am, with respect, warriors. Like us don't retire. We just get transferred to different battles. General Kim stepped forward, her good eye scanning the assembled alien delegates with the sharp gaze of someone who had learned to read enemies and allies alike. You want to know why Earth sent us instead of our younger soldiers? Because your enemy isn't new. The Vorthak swarm has been fought before, and the lessons of that war were written in blood and remembered by those who lived through it. She gestured to Captain Lee, who pulled out a small data pad with hands that trembled slightly from old nerve damage. Captain Lee here fought in the asteroid belt campaigns against the synthetic rebellion. Those machines adapted to our tactics. Just like your Vorthak. They learned, they evolved, they got stronger with each battle. Captain Lee's voice was rough, damaged by breathing recycled air in broken ships for too many years. We lost 70% of our fleet in the first encounters. The machines were smarter, faster, more advanced. But we won in the end. Want to know how? The alien delegates leaned forward despite themselves. We stopped fighting them the way they expected to be fought. We stopped using our best technology and started using our best thinking. We used tricks they couldn't adapt to because they weren't based on technology. They were based on experience. Colonel Choi activated a holographic display from her own portable unit. Images of human soldiers in desperate battles flashed across the projection. Men and women fighting with damaged equipment, broken weapons, and pure determination. The siege of Europa, she said simply. The enemy had better shields, better weapons, better everything. But they didn't have better soldiers. For 6 months we held that moon with nothing but mining equipment and stubborn courage. Not because we were stronger, but because we were willing to sacrifice everything to protect what mattered. Commander Yoon spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had given orders that sent friends to their deaths. The Vorthak consume technology, absorb knowledge, adapt to tactics, but they can't absorb experience. They can't learn what it means to lose everything, and keep fighting anyway. The council chamber had grown completely silent. Even the background hum of the station's systems seemed muted. Admiral Park planted his walking stick firmly on the deck plates. You've been fighting the Vorthak like they're a conventional enemy, using your best ships, your most advanced weapons, your standard tactics. And they've been eating you alive because that's exactly what they were designed to counter. General Kim's scarred face was grim. We've read your battle reports. Every engagement follows the same pattern. You meet them with superior force. They adapt and overwhelm you. Then they consume your technology and grow stronger. You're literally feeding them the tools they need to destroy you. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates. From dozens of species. Earth's military doctrine is different. We don't rely on having the best equipment. We rely on having the best soldiers. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. And most importantly, we've learned that sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. The implications of her words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. These weren't just old soldiers. They were the survivors of conflicts that had tested the limits of human endurance. They carried knowledge that couldn't be downloaded or programmed, only earned through blood, sweat, and the kind of desperate courage that came from having nothing left to lose. Councillor Vexara's voice was barely a whisper. What do you need from us? Admiral Park's smile grew wider, and for a moment, the assembled delegates could see the young warrior he had once been, hidden beneath the grey hair and old scars. Command authority over the combined fleet, complete tactical control, and most importantly, trust that we know what we're doing even when it looks like we're losing. The silence stretched on, filled with the weight of a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The massive war room of Council Station had been transformed into a battlefield of competing voices and desperate ideas. Holographic displays covered every surface, showing star charts marked with the advancing red tide of the Vorthak swarm. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension as military commanders from across the galaxy argued over tactics that had already failed. General Thexmar's crystalline body flashed angry orange patterns as he gestured at a tactical display. The Rigel defense matrix should have held 27 dreadnoughts, quantum torpedoes, reality-warping shields. How did they break through so easily? Commander Zeltara of the Aquatic Worlds bubbled furiously through her breathing apparatus. My people's bioships were specifically designed to counter adaptive enemies. The Vorthak absorbed our living technology and turned it against us within hours. The arguments continued, each species presenting their advanced weapons and sophisticated battle plans, all of which had crumbled before the swarm's relentless advance. Energy projections showed impossible power outputs. Quantum calculations predicted victory through mathematical precision. Probability matrices guaranteed success through superior numbers, all useless, all defeated. Admiral Park stood apart from the chaos, his weathered hands resting on his walking stick as he studied the main display. The holographic galaxy rotated slowly before him, red markers spreading like an infection across the outer rim systems. His one good eye tracked the swarm's movement patterns with the patience of a hunter who had learned to read his prey. The other human veterans gathered around him in silence. They had spent the last 6 hours reviewing every battle report, every tactical analysis, every piece of data the Council had collected about their enemy. While the alien commanders argued about weapons and shields, the humans had been studying something else entirely, the Vorthak themselves. General Kim broke the silence first, her scarred face grim as she pointed to a cluster of red markers. They're not just consuming randomly. Look at the pattern. Captain Lee nodded, his damaged hands manipulating the holographic controls to highlight specific systems. Mining worlds first, then industrial centers, then population hubs. They're building strength systematically. Colonel Choi activated another display layer, showing resource flows and trade routes. Every system they hit was a strategic target. They're not monsters. They're tacticians, smart ones. The alien commanders gradually quieted as they noticed the humans' discussion. Ambassador Kylethor approached, his forearms crossed skeptically. "You found something our best analysts missed?" Admiral Park finally spoke, his voice cutting through the room's tension like a blade. "You've been fighting them wrong from the beginning. Every single one of you." The war room fell silent. Dozens of alien eyes, sensors, and optical organs focused on the elderly human admiral. You see an enemy and you think bigger guns, stronger shields, more ships. It's natural, it's logical. And against the Vorthak, it's suicide. Park's finger traced the swarm's advance route on the display. They don't just adapt to your technology, they feed on it. Every weapon you fire teaches them. Every shield you raise shows them new possibilities. General Kim stepped forward, activating a new tactical display that showed human military history. During our colonial wars, we faced an enemy called the Titan Separatists. They had technology centuries ahead of ours, ships that could phase through solid matter, weapons that bent space-time, shields that turned kinetic energy into raw power. Images flashed across the display, human ships exploding against impossible defenses, entire fleets vanishing into dimensional tiers opened by enemy weapons. We lost the first dozen battles exactly like you've been losing to the Vorthak. We kept throwing our best technology at them, and they kept using it to destroy us. Kim's good eye glinted with memory. Then we changed tactics completely. Captain Lee pulled up historical footage of a battle above a gas giant. Human ships, old and battered, seemed to flee in panic from sleek enemy vessels. The Battle of Titan's moon, we pretended to run. Let them chase us into the planet's radiation belt, where their advanced sensors couldn't function properly. The display showed what happened next. The human ships suddenly turned, using simple chemical rockets and basic kinetic weapons. Technology. So primitive, the enemy's adaptive systems couldn't process it as a threat. We won by fighting stupid, Lee continued, by using weapons and tactics so outdated, so inefficient, that their computers couldn't comprehend what we were doing. Colonel Choi activated the main strategic display, showing the current galactic situation. The Vorthak follow the same consumption pattern the Titans used. They absorb, they adapt, they evolve, but they can only work with what they're given. She highlighted 13 star systems along the swarm's predicted route. These are natural choke points, systems where hyperspace routes converge, where they'll have to pass through whether they want to or not. Admiral Park's weathered finger tapped each system in sequence. We don't fight them here, we invite them. We make these systems look like the perfect targets, rich resources, advanced technology, minimal defenses. The alien commanders erupted in protest. Councillor Thexmar's crystalline form flashed violent red. You want us to sacrifice entire worlds, billions of lives? Already evacuated, General Kim replied calmly. We're not monsters. The populations get moved to safety first. What we leave behind are automated systems, technological honey traps designed to make the Vorthak consume exactly what we want them to consume. Commander Yoon spoke for the first time, his mechanical hearing aid clicking as he adjusted it. Poisoned data, corrupted technology, weapons designed to backfire when absorbed. We feed them a virus disguised as a feast. The room buzzed with translation devices working overtime as alien commanders tried to process this unconventional approach. Ambassador Zeltara's tentacles writhed with confusion. This is madness. You're talking about deliberately losing territory. We're talking about winning a war, Admiral Park replied firmly. Sometimes you have to give ground to gain advantage. Sometimes you have to look weak to be strong. Captain Lee activated a timeline showing the proposed battle sequence. Phase 1. Strategic withdrawal while laying technological traps. Phase 2. Funnel the swarm into kill zones loaded with corrupted systems. Phase 3. When they're weakened by consuming poison technology, we hit them with tactics they can't adapt to. What kind of tactics? Asked General Thexmar, his anger replaced by cautious curiosity. General Kim smiled grimly. The kind that worked before computers existed. Manual targeting, chemical explosives, ramming attacks. Fighting so primitive and desperate that no advanced intelligence would consider it a viable strategy. The war room fell silent as the implications became clear. This wasn't just unorthodox, it was deliberately backwards, a strategy that threw away technological advantage in favor of unpredictability. Colonel Choi brought up resource calculations. Their cost will be enormous. 13 systems temporarily sacrificed. Hundreds of ships deliberately lost in the early phases. Thousands of automated installations destroyed to sell the deception. But it will work, Admiral Park said with quiet confidence. We've done this before, not against the Vorthak, but against enemies just as adaptive, just as intelligent. The key is patience. You have to be willing to lose battles to win the war. The silence stretched on, broken only by the hum of the station's systems and the soft whisper of translation devices. The alien commanders looked at tactical displays, showing a plan that violated every principle of modern warfare. Finally, High Counselor Vexara's voice echoed through the chamber. The mathematics are disturbing. But your success probability calculations are higher than anything we've developed. Admiral Park nodded slowly. Mathematics don't win wars, Counselor. People do. And sometimes the only way to beat a superior enemy is to make them think you're not worth their attention until it's too late. The weight of the decision hung in the air like cosmic radiation, invisible but deadly. They could follow conventional wisdom and face certain defeat, or trust these scarred human veterans with a plan that looked like madness but might just save the galaxy. The clock was ticking, and the Vorthak swarm grew stronger with each passing hour. The void of space had never seen anything like it. Across 3 entire star systems, the largest military armada in galactic history, spread out in carefully planned formations. Ships from dozens of species floated in the darkness, sleek Zentari cruisers with their diamond-shaped hulls, massive aquatic world bioships that pulsed with living light, and the geometric perfection of synthetic collective vessels that looked more like flying cities than warships. At the center of this incredible fleet, aboard the command ship Unity's Hope, Admiral Park sat in a simple chair that looked ancient, compared to the high-tech command pods used by other species. His weathered hands moved across manual controls that most aliens thought were museum pieces. Around him, screens showed the positions of over 10,000 ships, all waiting for his orders. The first contact came exactly as predicted. Vorthak bioships detected at the edge of the Kepler system, reported Lieutenant Commander Yeltara, her aquatic suit bubbling with nervous energy. They're massive, Admiral. Each one is the size of a moon. Through the main view screen, the enemy appeared like nightmares made real. The Vorthak ships didn't look built. They looked grown. Organic curves mixed with mechanical structures, creating vessels that seemed alive and hungry. Tentacles the size of skyscrapers writhed alongside plasma cannons. Armor plating shifted and adapted in real time, learning from every shot fired. That it? How many? Admiral Park asked calmly, his voice steady despite the terror filling the bridge. Initial count shows 300 bioships, but they're multiplying, growing, creating new vessels from consumed matter. Park nodded as if he'd expected this. "General Kim, are your ground teams in position?" Kim's voice crackled through the comm from her command post on the surface of Kepler Prime. "All 17 worlds have been evacuated. Automated defense systems are active and loaded with our special packages. We're ready to give them exactly what they want." The Vorthak swarm moved forward like a living tide. As they advanced, they consumed everything in their path. Asteroids, space stations, even the cosmic dust floating between planets. With each consumption, they grew larger and more complex. "Admiral," called out Tactical Officer Rendai from the hegemony section of the bridge, "should we engage with maximum firepower? My quantum disruptors are fully charged." "Negative," Park replied, watching the enemy approach with the patience of a fisherman waiting for the perfect moment. "Let them get closer. Let them think we're afraid." The alien officers exchanged confused glances. Every instinct screamed at them to attack, to use their superior technology while they still had the advantage. But the human admiral seemed almost relaxed, like he was watching a chess game he'd already won. The first phase of the battle began exactly as the humans had planned. The Vorthak swarm crashed into the outer defense perimeter like a wave hitting a sandcastle. Energy shields flared and died. Advanced weapons fired once, twice, then fell silent as biomechanical parasites crawled through their systems. "They're adapting to our weapons," shouted Commander Texanol, his crystalline form flashing panic colors. "My reality-warping torpedoes aren't even scratching them." "Execute pattern Gamma," Admiral Park said calmly into his communicator. "All units, controlled withdrawal to grid Tango 4. What happened next amazed every alien commander watching. The massive fleet began to retreat. But it wasn't the panicked flight they expected. Instead, it was like watching a complex dance performed by thousands of dancers, each one knowing exactly where to go and when to move. Ships fell back in precise formations, covering each other's retreat. When the Zentari cruisers' energy shields failed against Vorthak bioweapons, they immediately switched to kinetic barriers, simple metal plating that the enemy couldn't easily adapt to. When AI targeting systems got infected by Vorthak biointerference, human gunners took manual control, their hands steady on triggers their species had been pulling for centuries. Captain Lee coordinated the fleet's movements from his position. On the bridge, his damaged hands dancing across controls that looked primitive but worked perfectly. "Squadron 7, fall back to position Charlie. Squadron 12, cover their retreat with chemical explosives." "Chemical explosives?" gasped Lieutenant Velnara. "Those are ancient weapons." Lee's scarred face cracked into a grin. "Ancient? Yes. But the Vorthak have never seen them before. Their adaptation systems are designed for energy weapons and advanced technology. They don't know what to do with a simple bomb." Across the battlefield, the human strategy began to show its genius. Every time the Vorthak adapted to one weapon, the combined fleet switched to something completely different. Plasma cannons gave way to railguns. Energy shields were replaced by simple armor plating. Advanced AI was shut down in favor of human intuition and experience. General Kim's voice came through the comm from the planet's surface. "Ground teams report successful bait deployment. The Vorthak are consuming our abandoned technology exactly as predicted." On 17 different worlds, the enemy swarm descended like locusts, devouring the high-tech equipment left behind by the evacuated populations. Quantum computers, fusion reactors, nano-manufacturing systems, all of it disappeared into the Vorthak's hungry maws. But Admiral Park had a secret. Every piece of technology left behind had been carefully modified. Computer viruses hidden in quantum processors, explosive charges built into fusion reactors, manufacturing systems programmed to create faulty components. "Phase 2 is complete," reported Colonel Choi from her monitoring station. "The Vorthak have consumed approximately 70% of our prepared technological packages." The enemy swarm was growing larger and more confident with each victory. Their bioships had doubled in size from consuming so much advanced technology. They moved forward with the arrogance of predators who had never met real resistance. That was exactly what the humans wanted. "Admiral," whispered Tactical Officer Rendai, "I'm reading massive energy buildups in the Vorthak fleet. They're preparing for a final assault." Park nodded slowly, his weathered face showing the ghost of a smile. Good. They've taken our bait completely. General Kim, are you ready for Phase 3? Ready and waiting, Admiral. All human combat veterans are in position. The bridge fell silent as everyone realized what was about to happen. The careful retreat, the apparent defeats, the sacrificed technology, it had all been leading to this. Moment, all units, Admiral Park said into his communicator, his voice carrying the authority of 7 decades of military service. Prepare for manual combat operations. Disable all AI systems. Switch to backup power. And remember, we're not fighting their technology anymore. We're fighting them. Across the combined fleet, thousands of ships powered down their most advanced systems. In their place, older, simpler, more reliable technology came online. The kind of equipment that couldn't be easily hacked, corrupted, or absorbed. The Vorthak swarm, bloated with consumed technology and confident in their superiority, charged forward for what they thought would be the final battle. They had no idea. They were flying directly into the most carefully planned trap in galactic history. The real battle was about to begin. The moment of truth arrived like thunder across 13 star systems. All at once, every carefully laid trap activated. The Kepler Nexus exploded into the largest battle the galaxy had ever witnessed. Admiral Park's voice echoed across thousands of ships as he gave the final command. All units, execute Operation Ancient Wisdom. Show them what old soldiers can. Do. What happened next defied every rule of modern warfare. The massive Vorthak swarm, bloated from consuming advanced technology, suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy that made no sense. Human-led forces attacked with weapons the Vorthak couldn't adapt to because they were too simple, too primitive, too unpredictable. In the Rigel system, Captain Lee commanded a squadron of mixed-species fighters that had replaced their energy. Weapons with old-fashioned chemical explosives. The Vorthak bioships, used to adapting to plasma and quantum weapons, couldn't process the simple mechanics of gunpowder and metal fragments. Target their sensor clusters with conventional missiles, Lee ordered, his damaged hands steady on manual controls. Don't let their bioprocessors figure out what we're doing. Explosions bloomed across the void as simple, stupid bombs tore through alien bioarmor that could deflect reality-warping torpedoes. The Vorthak ships writhed in confusion, their adaptive systems trying to evolve countermeasures against weapons that had no advanced technology to counter. Meanwhile, in the Tau City system, Colonel Choi led ground forces in the strangest assault ever recorded. Her mixed-species army used shovels, axes, and chemical fire to destroy Vorthak biomechanical structures that had shrugged off particle beams and quantum disruptors. Remember, she shouted to her troops as they advanced across a battlefield. That looked like something from humanity's ancient wars. They can't adapt to what they don't understand. Keep it simple, keep it brutal, keep them confused. The alien soldiers under her command, proud warriors from advanced civilizations, found themselves fighting with tools their ancestors might have used thousands of years ago. And it worked. The Vorthak bioforms, programmed to counter sophisticated threats, couldn't process the simple violence of sharp metal and burning chemicals. But the real genius of the human strategy revealed itself in space. Admiral Park had positioned the combined fleet so that when the Vorthak consumed the poison technology, they would be scattered across 13 different systems, too spread out to support each other, but close enough that each group would think they were winning. Phase 3 execute, Park commanded, and suddenly the nature of the battle changed completely. The hidden human veterans, thousands of old soldiers who had been waiting in reserve, emerged from concealment in ships. That looked like ancient relics. These vessels had been stripped of all advanced technology and fitted with the most basic weapons humanity had ever developed. General Kim coordinated the final assault from her command ship, a battered cruiser that had seen action in 3 different wars. All human units, remember your training. Fight like your grandfathers did. Fight like you've got nothing to lose. The aging warriors threw themselves into battle with a ferocity that stunned their alien allies. These weren't young soldiers seeking glory. These were old fighters who understood that this might be their last chance to protect everything they had spent their lives defending. Commander Yoon, his mechanical hearing aid sparking from battle. Damage manually piloted his fighter through a swarm of Vorthak bioships. His weapons were simple kinetic cannons that fired metal slugs, but his targeting was perfect, the result of 50 years of combat experience. "You want to adapt to this?" he muttered, firing round after round into Vorthak command nodes. Adapt to 40 years of knowing how to kill things that want to kill me. Across the 13 systems, the battle raged for 6 hours. The Vorthak, realizing too late that they had been tricked, fought with desperate fury. But they were scattered, poisoned by corrupted technology, and facing an enemy that fought with tactics they couldn't understand or counter. One by one, the massive bioships fell silent. The Vorthak command nodes, isolated and overwhelmed, sent out desperate signals for reinforcement that never came. Their own consumed technology was failing them. Infected with viruses and sabotage programs, the humans had hidden in every piece of bait. When the shooting finally stopped, the void was filled with debris, the remains of both enemies and allies, who had given everything for victory. But something unprecedented happened in the aftermath. Instead of celebrating, the human veterans immediately organized rescue operations. Medical ships rushed to aid stations where human doctors worked alongside alien medics to save lives, including Vorthak survivors. High Counselor Vexara arrived at one of these field hospitals and watched in amazement as Colonel Choi knelt beside a dying Vorthak warrior form, carefully treating injuries that had been inflicted by her own forces just hours before. The alien creature was massive, its biomechanical body fused with consumed technology in ways that made it look more machine than living thing. But it was. Clearly suffering, its optical sensors flickering weakly as its life systems failed. "Why?" Vexara asked, her tentacles writhing with confusion. "This creature was trying to destroy everything we hold dear just hours ago." Colonel Choi looked up from her work, her scarred face gentle despite the fresh battle wounds she herself carried. "Because the war is over, Counselor. Today they were our enemy. Tomorrow perhaps they could be something else entirely." She gestured to the other medical stations where humans, aliens, and even recovering Vorthak worked together. "We've learned something over our centuries of warfare. Today's enemy can become tomorrow's ally if you give them the chance. Hatred is easy. Forgiveness takes real strength." The rescue operations continued for days. Ships that had been firing at each other worked together to pull survivors from wreckage. Translation devices that had been used for battle commands now carried words of comfort and medical instructions. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session, but not to plan victory parades or divide conquered territory. Instead, they gathered to formally recognize something that had never happened before in galactic history. The chamber was packed, as Admiral Park stood before the assembly one final time. His simple uniform looked humble compared to the elaborate dress of alien dignitaries, but every being in that room knew they were looking at the architect of their salvation. "The Council recognizes humanity as a senior military partner," announced High Counselor Vexara, "with full strategic authority in matters of galactic defense. The vote is unanimous." Applause filled the chamber. The clicking of synthetic appendages, the bubbling of aquatic species, the harmonic resonance of crystalline beings. But Admiral Park raised his hand for silence. "We appreciate the honor," he said, his weathered voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "But we're not politicians or administrators. We're soldiers. Our job was to stop the Vorthak, and that job is finished." He gestured to his fellow veterans, who stood quietly behind him. "We go home now. Back to our farms and workshops, our grandchildren, and quiet retirement. But remember this, experience cannot be taught, only earned through fire and loss. Wisdom cannot be programmed into computers, only lived through years of making hard choices." The old Admiral's eyes swept across the assembled delegates. "If darkness comes again, if the galaxy faces another threat that your advanced weapons and sophisticated tactics cannot handle, you know where to find us. We'll be the old humans sitting on porches, telling stories that sound too crazy to be true." He smiled then, and for a moment the assembled aliens could see the young warrior he had once been. "But they'll all be true. Every impossible story, every desperate victory, every time we won by refusing to quit when any sane being would have surrendered. The human delegation departed as quietly as they had arrived. No fanfare, no ceremonies, just old soldiers heading home after a job well done. But their names entered galactic legend, not as conquerors or heroes, but as the aging warriors who saved the galaxy through wisdom earned in the crucible of countless battles. As their transport ship disappeared into hyperspace, the galaxy watched them go with new understanding. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from the newest technology or the youngest soldiers, but from aged hands that have known both victory and defeat and learned from both. The Vorthak threat was ended, but more importantly, the galaxy had learned something about the nature of true strength. It wasn't found in quantum computers or reality-warping weapons. It was found in the hearts of those who had fought so many battles that they understood the real cost of war and were willing to pay it anyway to protect what mattered. The end.